Good evening. I would like to welcome officers from NBN Co Limited and particularly welcome Ms Ellie Sweeney, the new Chief Executive Officer. This is your first appearance as Chief Executive Officer, so welcome.
Thank you.
I note you don't have name tags.
Yes.
We might want to rectify that for the assistance of everybody in Hansard and broadcasting. So I believe somebody's trying to make you some.
Okay.
So what we might do is, if you would like to provide your opening statement, then I will get you just to put on record who each of you are and where you're sitting for the assistance of broadcasting in Hansard. So, Ms Sweeney, please
Wonderful.
Go ahead.
Chair, thank you, Chair. It is great to be in Canberra for what is my first appearance before the committee, so thank you. Tonight I'm joined by our Chief Financial Officer, Philip Knox, our Chief Customer Officer, Anna Perrin, our Chief Network Officer, Dion Libanovic, and Chief Development Officer for Regional and Remote, Gavin Williams. Before I start, I'd like to thank Philip Knox for his leadership as the interim CEO for NBN. I'd also like to acknowledge our former board chair, Kate McKenzie, and Director Alicia Parker for their contributions. Kevin Russell is the acting interim chair. I'd like to open with our financial positions, if I may, for the first half of FY25, the 6 months to December 31st, 2024. I'm pleased to report that NBN is on track to meet all of our key financial targets for the fiscal year as outlined in our 2025 Statement of Corporate Intent. During the half, we achieved total revenue of $2.9 billion, and that was up 4%. Our earnings before interest, tax, depreciation and amortisation was $2.1 billion, and that was up 7%. And we saw solid growth in business revenue, which rose to $599 million, and that's 5% up on H1 of 2024. Our operating expenses decreased by 2%, and that was compared to the prior corresponding period, and that was down to $821 million. The reduction is reflective of our efficiency and our cost optimisation initiatives, which helped mitigate continuing inflationary pressures. We continue to push fibre deeper into communities and to improve our fixed wireless and our hybrid fibre coaxial networks. Capital expenditure in the half of $1.9 billion was up 2% on H1 of FY24 as we invested in network, digital infrastructure and in capacity. Our national broadband network now connects 8.62 million residential and business premises, and after adding more than 36,000 connections in the 12 months to the 31st of December 2024. And this equates to over 20 million Australians accessing the network every day, and NBN carrying more than 80% of Australia's data traffic. Our results reflect discipline in our capital management plan and our ongoing focus on our customers, on simplification and innovation to become a sustainable business. Since completing the initial build in 2020, we are upgrading virtually every part of our network. It is core to our strategy to provide improved network reliability, greater capacity and faster speeds to more premises around Australia, while ensuring that all Australians can reap the economic and social benefits of fast broadband today and into the future. To that end, 82% of homes and businesses, or 9.4 million premises across the country, are now close to a gigabit capable. We're on track to complete upgrades to the local fibre network that will enable 3.5 million homes and businesses served by fibre to the node, along with 1.5 million served by fibre to the curb, to upgrade to fibre to the premises by the end of December 2025. This will take the percentage of homes and businesses that are near gigabit capable to over 90%. In the 2.5 years since we launched our Fibre Connect program, a total of 628,000 premises have upgraded to full fibre connections, gaining access to the most reliable, resilient and future-ready technology, coupled with the fastest available NBN residential and business speed tiers. In fact, well over 50% of all new service orders in December were for wholesale plans that were 100 megabit download speeds and above. On our network, built to carry large volumes of data, We are seeing ongoing growth in traffic as consumers continue to adopt higher speed plans and use the network in new ways like healthcare and business, education and entertainment. In fact, just last Friday, through the busiest hours of 7 p.m. and 11 p.m, NBN recorded the highest peak traffic in its 15-year history, nearing 33 terabits per second. The business case for ultra-fast, deep-capacity NBN network has never been stronger. Economic research from Expenditure, commissioned by NBN, estimates that a faster, high-capacity NBN network will improve gross domestic product by around $400 billion to the end of the decade. This GDP increase is forecast to be felt across all of the nation, with increases in average broadband speeds having 16 times the impact in remote areas and twice the impact in regional areas than in the capital cities. At a network level, we continue to prioritise reliability, capacity, security and speed. And that's why the recent announcement of a joint investment of up to $3 billion in equity from the Australian government, coupled with more than $800 million from NBN, to provide an upgrade path for the remaining fibre to the node network across Australia is critical for lifting our digital capabilities. Significant upgrades have also been completed to our HFC network, which currently services around 2.5 million premises. HFC customers can now access our highest residential and business speed tiers alongside customers on FTTP, and they'll be the first to stand to benefit from the boost to our highest speed products planned for this September 14 of this year. Our fixed wireless and satellite upgrade program has been completed on time and on budget, and it's now delivering fast broadband to Australians in regional remote areas where fibre is not available. There's been a lot of recent interest in low Earth orbit satellites for NBN. As a statutory infrastructure provider, it's essential we have a range of technologies to service the connectivity needs of all Australians, no matter where they live. Currently, our aim is to have a LEOsat offering in place before our Skymaster geostationary satellites reach end of service in the early 2030s. We are advanced in our procurement process for selecting a LEO service provider, and I look forward to having more to say about this very soon. Upgrading our network is about providing capacity to meet large data demands as this continues to grow. And for context, the average data downloaded per NBN service per month was 490 gigabits in December 2024, which is more than 7 times what it was the decade before. As technology innovation advances, multi-gigabit broadband speeds will become increasingly essential to support the explosion of data-hungry applications like virtual and augmented reality, AI, and large language models that are fast becoming mainstream. For business, faster broadband will drive productivity gains and innovation and a chance to access new markets online and talent from anywhere. Australia needs to be future ready, and NBN's strategy is to make sure that it is. It's also why we continue to support the Australian Government's School Students Broadband Initiative, the First Nations Community Wi-Fi, and engage with the Low Income and Digital Inclusion Forum. We do operate in a competitive environment, and the growth in our customer base comes in context of this intense competition, including from mobile broadband, fixed wireless, and of course from the LEOsat providers. That level of full and open competition is what makes Australia's telecommunications sector so dynamic. It's also why NBN is focused on delivering reliable, fast and robust wholesale broadband services to meet the current and future needs of our customers, and why we work collaboratively with our retailers and our regulators on initiatives like new and improved speed tiers and service standards as part of our replacement module application under the Special Access Undertaking. Let me close by saying what a privilege it is to be leading NBN at a time when Australians are increasingly dependent on broadband connectivity in almost every aspect of their lives. NBN is not just building and maintaining infrastructure for today, it is making a fundamental contribution to the social and the economic fabric of our nation. Thank you, Chair. We are now happy to take the committee's questions. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. This morning we had quite a lot of conversations about the low Earth orbital satellites by nature of the announcement made by the Minister this morning to open up that D2D access in areas where there isn't coverage. How do those sort of LEO stats compare to the fibre in terms of customer experience and capacity?
It's a great question, Chair. I'm going to throw to my colleague here, our Chief Network Engineer. Dion's in a fantastic position to give you, I think, some colour around the difference we're seeing about low Earth orbit satellite versus the full fibre network. And I think it's important for me to say, up front, we definitely understand that there is a place for LEO, particularly in a country like Australia, which has such a wide country and obviously a lot of low density and rural and isolated environments. So I think, again, I'm going to throw to Dion and he can give you, I think, a very informative answer.
Thanks for the question, Senator. So, low Earth
orbit... You could just start with your full name and title.
Apologies. For the record, Dion Lubanovic, Chief Network Officer at NBN. Low Earth orbit satellites do have a part to play in servicing low density parts of Australia. However, when it comes to serving medium density or high density populated areas, the ultimate choice on how we make sure that we service future needs is fibre. LEOs are not designed to be built or designed to actually operate in medium and high density populated areas. It is a great advance in satellite technology, but there are a number of challenges when you think about how LEOs can actually work for that medium and high density areas. A couple of those challenges include the fact that LEOs need to share broadband capacity across geographical areas that it serves. Each satellite itself covers around 300 square kilometres. So when you think about, and you put that in perspective of what that looks like in a metro area, we're talking around 30 metropolitan suburbs together, and that whole share capacity, that whole coverage needs to be shared across all of those areas. So depending what your neighbour down the street, further down in the local community, more broader in the suburbs over, if you used it in that location, your service speed and your service performance could potentially degrade depending on what those neighbours and the local community are actually doing. Any wireless service, whether it's a mobile service or a LEOsat, uses what we call wireless spectrum, and wireless spectrum has limitations. There's only so much of that spectrum available, and how users may use that has to be shared overall. So whether it's mobile network or LEOsats, they have that in common. If you compare that with a fibre network, which we call, and what I like to talk about is like having a dedicated digital superhighway into your home or business. No matter what your neighbour is doing, no matter what is occurring in the suburb over, more broadly, you have that dedicated connection pathway that operates consistently through all hours of the day. Senator, this is also not theory in terms of how this comes about. More broadly, we've seen this in the lived experience of what customers are seeing. The ACCC's independent measuring broadband report, which was released just a couple of months ago, highlights that consumers are seeing on a LEOsat service speeds that degrade by up to 31% through those busy hours. The busy hour is anywhere from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. And that's because most of the users in that coverage area are using that service at that point with that shared spectrum and sharing that actual coverage and capacity. If you compare that to the measured broadband performance on NBN's higher speed tiers, which are 5 times faster and soon later this year will be up to 10 times faster than what you can get on a LEO satellite, there was a degradation of less than 2% in the same busy hours on our fibre and HFC networks. So fibre does provide that very reliable, consistent, resilient and high performance through any part of the day in medium and high density populated areas. The one other aspect I'd probably highlight as well is the upgradability of fibre is a technology that outpaces any other technology, period. Last year we proved this from a world's first trial with Nokia, who we partnered with, where we installed advanced fibre optical lasers into our fibre network, our live residential fibre network, and we showcased that we're able to achieve 83 gigabits per second in the future off the fibre that we're installing today. And the only thing that we need to do in the future, in future decades, is to change those electronic boxes at either end, the exchange down the street and inside customers' homes. And the point of this is that upgradability and the cost to upgrade in future decades is much cheaper compared to obviously life cycle of global satellites and what that could look like too. So we do see LEOs as an important advance in low density populated areas. But when we think about medium density and high density areas, fibre is the choice for the future.
Excellent. But for those low density areas with limited access, obviously the LEOs are going to make a difference.
It is a great advance for exactly that reason, because our geosatellites do cover all parts of Australia, and what the LEOs are really doing is reducing that coverage area for those low density to provide more capacity into the future. So we do see that as a great advance and something that we will be looking to leverage in the future as we've communicated in the past.
So as your satellite network reaches a point in its design life where it needs something else?
So, Chair, that's exactly right. So, again, the satellites, and I think we've spoken about this probably previously, but the satellites were commissioned in 2015 and 2016. At the time, they were obviously very state-of-the-art. And, again, they come up for end of life at the end of 2032, or to actually be, to have to be restarted from a generation perspective. I might throw just to Gavin to give any other update. But again, we see the logical next step for us is to move customers on GeoSat to LEO.
Yeah, thanks, Sweeney. So, I mean, I've testified before in this committee about the fact we have been in a careful process to explore opportunities and options around our satellite service, taking into consideration that the current satellites estimated to run out of fuel, the first one about October 2032 and the next one early in 2033. So the exam question was really to explore what options were available, in particular in relation to low Earth orbit satellites, so effectively testing whether there is a buy versus build kind of opportunity for that satellite. And as Ms Sweeney said in her opening statements, that process is well progressed. And we in fact aim to have a LEO-based service available before the expiry of the current generation. And that, of course, takes account of some quite significant considerations. We are the statutory infrastructure provider. There's considerations around definition of what a service looks like, security considerations, technical, commercial and operational considerations that have been part of that process. And of course that's in a backdrop of some significant improvements we've been able to make in our SkyMuster service as a consequence of a material upgrade to fixed wireless service. So perhaps building on Mr Lubanovich's testimony around fibre, I didn't want the opportunity to go to talk about our fixed wireless upgrade and our satellite upgrade that are doing more than ever for regional Australia. We've recently announced the completion of our fixed wireless upgrade that includes pushing the boundaries from around 220,000 square kilometres to 345,000 square kilometres. So it's, to put that in perspective, that's like adding the surface area of the island of Ireland to our network. It's quite a substantial kind of area. That's enabled us to reimagine the capacity management on our existing satellites. So ahead of any strategic considerations that we're talking about in low Earth orbit, we've been able to lift the speeds and offer uncapped data to our SkyMuster satellite customers and lift the speeds and capabilities of our fixed wireless service with now superfast plan available to a good proportion of our coverage area, with speeds up to 400 megabits per second and beyond. So these are speeds that are not currently available on low Earth orbit satellites. So we have a terrestrial capability in the NBN network in our fixed wireless service now that frankly it's a world-class kind of capability, and I think it's important that consumers are aware that these kind of capabilities exist. You don't have to go out and spend $550 on a terminal. You don't have to pay for a professional install. NBN can take care of that, and there's some very cost-effective plans available, whether that's on the SkyMuster service or fixed wireless.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. We might go to Senator Hanson-Young.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have many questions for you tonight, but I do have some questions about the the budget for advertising for NBN. I noticed over the summer NBN was advertising at the cricket.
Yeah. Senator, that's correct, yep.
What's the purpose of the advertising?
I'm going to throw to my colleague, Ms Perrin. Anna heads up our product sales and also our marketing team, so let me get her to give you an update.
It's Anna Perrin, I'm the Chief Customer Officer. As a wholesaler, it's often not obvious why NBN needs to advertise and why we need to market to consumers and businesses. What we found is that we do work in a dynamic and ever-changing market, and we've made significant upgrades to our networks over the last few years. And we know that one of the number one issues that we face is that consumers and businesses just don't know what's available to them. They either don't know that the NBN is there, or they don't know what speeds are available to them. So the cricket was honestly a really good way to get the message out to the millions of cricket-loving Australians that watch that game. We know that 13.8 million Australians watch the cricket, and it definitely is the case that we know that people that saw that are 2 times more likely to go and check what plan they're on, what speed they're on. It's about education.
Obviously, individual households, internet users, the account holders of their internet plans, they don't have a bill, or they're not buying a product from NBN. They're buying it through a retailer.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
NBN is a government company, a public company.
Yes.
I find it. I just wonder whether the money could be spent on delivering better services to the customers than on promoting the NBN brand at the cricket.
Senator, if I may, one of the challenges is we work with 120 retailers that offer NBN services, but not all of those retailers offer all of our products or offer all of our services. So, we know even from a recent RTIRC report that said that ubiquitous broadband is now available everywhere, but the number one issue facing consumers is they just don't know that the national broadband network is available. So it's not always the case that if you go to your retailer and ask your retailer for an NBN service, that they will be able to provide that to you. It is a confusing environment for sure, but that's why we take our role in education quite seriously. And in fact, retailers are actually asking us to do more of that, particularly as technology gets more and more confusing.
The retailers want the public to pay for their advertising.
Retailers are asking us to help educate consumers and businesses about what they need to do. I'll give you a really simple example. There was recently a customer who'd had ongoing issues. NBN had spoken to this customer, so had the retailer. There'd been a ton of discussion with this customer. And then we sent a technician out to her home. And actually, because none of our tests showed that there was any issue in her home, when we went out there, it was simply because she'd bought a fish tank and had put it in front of her modem. And by moving the modem, she got the service that she was paying for and that she needed. And it's that kind of education. When you go to our website, there's a ton of information about what speed plans are available, how you need to set your home up, and also which retailers sell which plans.
So how much is NBN Co's advertising PR budget?
Senator, I'd have. We have. I mean, the majority of our money actually goes into making sure that we're marketing to people to tell them that an upgrade is available in their home. We also have specific programs. If you move into a new home, we'll send you some material to tell you that NBN's available. We also do things like the Bush Summit. We work in regional Australia to again raise awareness.
Chair, sorry.
I understand. I might need to take the question on notice specifically around the advertising budget, Senator Hanson.
Yeah, I'd like the budget. And And it'd be good to have a breakdown of the major spend of the budget. I mean,
Yes.
I picked the cricket because I saw it.
Yes.
Right? But assumably you don't just advertise at the cricket, you advertise in other
Cricket
places.
is the only that's the only external advertising we've done, Senator. So we'll be happy to provide that
So
to
that
you.
must have been, that's a big contract for you then, in terms of...
Well, we know that 13.8 million Australians watch the cricket and watch the men's and women's test that's over the summer. So it was a good way to get the message out there.
Yeah. The advertising at the cricket wasn't telling people that they could upgrade, though, or how to move their fish tank from in front of their modem. It was just advertising the NBN logo and brand, wasn't it?
What we're finding, though, is we're getting a lot more traction in terms of people remembering to check their speed plan, come and get more information from us or from our retailers. And our retailers are following up that particular campaign with various direct approaches themselves.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Senator, it's probably fair to say, I mean, it's an interesting dynamic that we work in. So you have the NBN network, obviously, we have the retailer network, and increasingly we have, obviously, people's in-home networks. So I think that, it's really incumbent on us, particularly as we launch speed tiers, to make sure that as we provide that upgraded speed tier capability, it's going to be a good experience. So again, I think it was the first time we've advertised externally. Obviously, we'll PIR in terms of the benefit of that as well, and we will come back with the data around the budgets as well. A lot of work is done from a social media perspective as well, Insta, so quite, guerrilla campaigns as well from a digital perspective from our customer bases, and also in-home experiences as more and more people buy smart TVs, really making sure that they're set up for the best experience to really leverage the investments that we've made.
Did you have any conversations with the Minister about this advertising budget before, or the advertising plan before you did it?
It actually, I think, predates me, so I'm going to have to take that one on notice.
Okay. Nobody else has the answer to that as to whether you discussed it with the Minister or the Minister's office?
Not that I recall, but I'm happy to take that and just double check.
I'm just asking, given it's government, a government product, public spending, and we're in the middle of an election year. So there's an obvious question as to the role of government in this. So those questions would be helpful to get back quickly. And you're saying that, Ms Sweeney, you're saying that you'll do an analysis of this, and so we can expect to have that perhaps at the next estimates?
I think it's fair to say that it's the first time NBN's done it, and of course we'd be doing some analysis on the benefit and the return around that advertising spend. Yeah.
So obviously I've asked for the budget. It'd be good to have a dollar figure, but I'd also like it as a percentage of kind of administration management costs. And I'm wondering what fits under that. Obviously, you're saying the cricket was the first time you did it, but there must be other PR spends, as you're saying. There's social media, there's other things.
The majority of the money that we spend actually goes into things like sending you an email or, we send the premise, we might send the premise like a notification just to say fibre is now available at your home. That's the majority of our spend, but we can get you the breakdown.
Yeah. And have you discussed with the retailers what they should be chipping in for this type of education, seeing as they're the ones making the money off it?
We have
people sign up for the internet, they pay their bill to the retailer, they're the ones who are banking the profit.
We have great relationships with the retailers that we work with, and many of them do a lot of work themselves. They spend a lot of money on marketing themselves. We also have what we call a marketing development fund, where we will contribute $1 and they will contribute $1, and we will do that together.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Chair, thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Cadell.
I'd like to stay on the same point. I find it amazing, the answers here. You're saying that cricket is the only external thing you got and you don't know how much it costs?
Sorry, we were talking about the overall spend.
But you said cricket was the only. How much did the cricket sponsorship cost?
The cricket, we have an arrangement.
Chief Financial Officer there, if you can.
We have an arrangement with Cricket Australia where they have asked us to notify them if we're going to specifically disclose that number.
You're at Senate estimates.
I understand.
I didn't
Senator.
realise. Thank you, Senator Cadell, because I thought it was that they didn't have the figure.
Yeah.
But actually, you're saying
For the whole spend, yeah.
Okay, for the whole spend, sure, take that on notice. But if you've got the figure for what you spent on the advertising for the cricket, I would like that tonight. And this is Senate estimates, and I'm sorry, but Cricket Australia doesn't dictate what gets handed up here.
If we could take it on notice, and I will get that back to you as quickly as possible. It's part of the arrangement because Cricket Australia obviously has.
But you're a public entity. You're a public entity.
Senator Hanson-Young, they do have the right to take it on notice.
I'm sorry, Chair. They don't have the right to take on notice if they have the answer. They have the right to ask a public interest immunity. They do not have the right to take it on notice.
They do have the right to take it on notice to consider the sensitivities, not to refuse to provide it.
Yeah.
Commercial incompetence is not a sensitivity on this is allowed.
Not for a PII, but they are indeed entitled to go away and consider it.
So NBN Co is covering up how much it paid because they don't want to put it here tonight. Is that what I'm taking up?
Senator Cadell, I think that it is a long-standing practice in these forums to allow officials to take a question on notice so that they may consider sensitivities. It's not reasonable to draw the inference that you have just drawn from that decision, which is clearly available to the officials under the standing orders.
The Chair has said that commercial sensitivity is not a public interest immunity claim. That is the only claim
Not
that was raised by Ms Perrin by itself. She has the information. So, in writing,
Senator,
can we have...
So, Senator Cadell, just to be really clear, my point was that in and of itself is not a PII.
I agree.
However, they are well within their rights to take it on notice to provide the answer from a sensitivity perspective and any other considerations they may need to consider for whatever contracting they have in place. They're not refusing to answer it, they're just going to take it on notice and come back to us. Now, if they come back without the answer, then of course that becomes a whole different ballgame. But I don't believe that's what you're saying to us, Ms Perrin, at this point in time.
We just want to notify Cricket Australia under the terms of the contract we have with them. It's about Cricket Australia, not about NBN providing the answer.
Well, I mean, this is part of my problem with the way this is all being run, because NBN is a public entity. You are a taxpayer funded, you're for the purposes of the public. I don't really care whether Cricket Australia is watching or not. If they're not watching, well, you could send them a text and tell them you're going to have to cough up the information. But it's not up to them to dictate what information the public has a right to know.
As the chair, I'm going to say that they have the right to take it on notice to come back with as much information as they can provide to us, and if there is any reason they're not prepared to provide it to us, they can put that in writing and we can deal with that then. But just be really clear that a commercially sensitive scenario in and of itself is unlikely to get you a free pass on not providing information.
We'll take it on notice.
Chair, we're totally fine. We will take that on notice. I think the 2 points have been very clearly made regarding the marketing spend and also Cricket Australia.
Further to that point, was hospitality part of the...
Absolutely not.
There was no
Senator.
hospitality
No.
at all? Okay. There's also ads on 2GB, am I wrong? Just for the NBN brand?
I'm sorry, Senator. I'm not sure whether we. I don't. That's not something I recall. It could have been part of our Bush Summit work that we did earlier this year.
Earlier this year, okay. So in the ACCC Special Access Undertaking Annual Expenditure Report that was published on 19 December, it lists a number for $65 million being on marketing and product cost for the previous year. Would that sound about right to you?
I'd need to go and check. I'm happy to take that.
Do you have that, Mr Knox?
I'd need to check that.
So you don't have the financial figures for 24 in front of you, Chief Financial Officer?
I don't know that specific number. I'd have to look that up.
Can you look up what it was?
So this,
How do we come to budget estimates, without the answers to basic questions such as expenditure. It could be probably the number one thing we're going to be asking here about today, and we don't have basic answers for this. We've got a cash burn. What was the cash burn, I think you said? $781 million?
What period are you talking about, Senators?
So what was the cash burn for the last financial year?
I think, Senator, if we go to the last half or the last financial
Last half?
year,
What's the cash burn for last half?
if we go for a couple of things, if we look at the actual, the cash position for the organisation, and I'm on page 18 of the document, Philip can jump in here, but the operating cash flow was 1.977 billion, and that was up 7%. I will get to the number. There was then the capital expenditure. There was some injection from the federal government of 528. There were lease payments of 610. There was interest on borrowings at 520. And so the free cash flow position was a negative, to your point, of 507 million. And that was a delta from the previous half of 514. So again, that was a slight improvement of 1%. So the operating cash flow of the business was up 7% of 133, and it was negative 507.
So we burnt $500 million of taxpayers' money in 6 months, that's after including another $500 million from the government. So probably more $1 billion. Without that injection, we've spent $1 billion of taxpayers' money, and we're not keeping flow of expenditure like marketing. And to Senator Hanson's point, it was just brand marketing. There was no call to action on check your plan. There was no Sky Muster that's getting killed by Starlink linked to it. It was pure brand. And we talk about 121 customers. How wouldn't 80% of your business be basically 3 or 4 customers?
Yeah.
Well, maybe a couple of things to address your points there. In terms of the actual capital expenditure for our business, and again, Philip, I don't know if you want to jump in here, but in terms of the capital expenditure is clearly articulated. And so again, the burn in your parlance has been around the fibre upgrade program, which again was $845 million. The fixed wireless upgrade, which again was 376. Again, network upgrades and capacity, because I think, Senator, as you're well aware, we not only do we operate, maintain, but we do obviously upgrade the networks and spend money, particularly on keeping this critical infrastructure asset in the right state that it should be. Connect and assure, so upgrading customers from a connection and also assurance. And then 169 million was spent on IT and also on security.
I get that, but we're coming here, and the testimony of Mr Knox was I'd have to look that up. So we don't have these financial figures there. Was the minister have to sign off on the cricket sponsorship, or was that done at CEO level?
It was done at CEO level.
Okay. I'll move on from there. I've got real concerns about what that was and how it was. It looks to me like it wasn't all it was meant to be. Well, you mentioned you're talking about LEO satellites. You're talking about providers. Given that you do not want to be the owner-operator, we're talking about sovereign risk of that. You're talking about launching and owning, or you're talking third-party contracting to be the sole operator of other satellites?
Senator, I'll throw to Gavin in a second, but again, LEOs, as you're probably aware, they are global satellites.
Yep.
So it would be very unusual for a sovereign country to be able to launch a LEO satellite.
Right.
In terms of the RFP, again, we were working and have been working with the global LEO providers. So I
was just on the map there, and I think there's about 160 over Australia at the moment. They're watching their tracks as they go around. So my concern is if Australia isn't going to own their own stats because of those things, we have this morning an announcement where we're going to have the universal service guarantee. There is only one operator at the moment and can have a fully operating network by 2027, isn't there, of LEO sats?
Gavin, I think we may have a different view on that.
Okay.
And I don't think that was the evidence that was provided to you this morning.
They couldn't offer one. I
Goodall.
asked one minister, I said, give me one other contractor than Starlink that will have a fully serviced net by 27, and that wasn't being able to give them to me. So if I can get that now, who do we think will have full coverage of Australia in LEO sats other than Starlink by 2027?
I'm not sure that I can answer that correctly. We're looking, as you know, to be able to have a LEO satellite ready to go to replace our geo satellites.
I
Our
understand, yeah.
timeframes are probably slightly different.
Yeah, and that's right, 2032.
So we've got about 7
2032.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I understand that transition. That's fine.
Yep.
My concern is we're talking about the Amazons, we're talking about other providers, but none of them seem to be able to have the coverage of Starlink currently has by 2027. They may have by 2032. I have no qualms about that on that launch. So
We're going to rotate if you want to
Okay.
wrap up.
I have many
You
more to
can-
go. I'll pass now and come back.
Okay. Senator Dunman.
I just want to talk a bit about small business. So I don't think you covered this in your opening statement, but obviously rural and regional Australia, small businesses in particular, really need reliable broadband access in particular. Can you talk about how rural and regional Australia will benefit from the completion of the fibre upgrade program with a specific kind of focus on small business, please?
Okay, fantastic. I think the thing we did mention, obviously, was the 5% growth on business in our results to $599 million. I might ask my colleagues to represent this in two ways. One, maybe just for us to give an update in terms of particularly the remaining 622,000 fibre to the node upgrades that we're doing. I might get Dion just to talk to that in a little bit more detail, and the percentage that we will see in regional and remote Australia, and particularly around some of the benefits that we expect to be able to see by going to a full fibre or a fibre upgrade path for those customers. And then Anna, you might like to add in around some of the plans and the work that we're doing also with business.
Senator, maybe if I just start with the first 3.5 million rollout that we've been doing since 2021. We are well ahead of where we expected to be. 2.8 million of that 3.5 is now ready for order to retailers and customers across Australia, and we're on track to complete that by the end of this calendar year, both in time and within budget. And that does mean, as Ms Sweeney mentioned this earlier, that 9.4 million premises have capacity and capability to order up to gigabit services, which is 82% of the fixed line network. By December, we'll see 90% of the fixed line network able to be gigabit capable. We're also seeing continued strong take-up through this rollout. We're seeing weekly run rates consistent with what we released at the half-year results of around 8,500 orders, which cover both homes and small businesses and businesses in general across Australia every single week, which is also ahead of where we expect it to be. And what we're seeing as customers move over from copper to the fibre network is a reduction in customer faults, in truck rolls, for faults, and resolving copper issues that are within the network. And I think that's a great outcome in terms of where we projected the network to be. We're also seeing, because we have focused on homes and businesses that have underperforming lines, copper lines at the moment, that we're seeing very strong take-up, which I might get Ms Perrin to mention what they're seeing in that front. In regards to the recent announcement, the 622,000 final premises in the FTTN network, more than 50%, around 54% are in regional Australia, with around 46% in metropolitan suburbs still. We're progressing that at pace. We're operationalising that program as we speak, and we've been doing that since the announcement. We've conducted a number of town hall sessions in multiple states with contractors so that they're aware of what's coming. And we've also been meeting key stakeholders across Australia, particularly in the ACT, state government agencies, to support some of the rollout that we have here in the ACT. We've already initiated design activities for that rollout to begin getting fibre and construction activities underway by June of this year, and expect the first cohort of that 622 to be released to retailers to market by the end of this calendar year. We will be progressively doing that construction over the next couple of years from 2026 onwards and releasing that as we go. So that will complement the entire FTTN network, provide every home and business in that area opportunity to move to a fibre service. It may be worthwhile just to touch on the underperforming lines. Ms. Miriam.
Yeah, I mean, just to make a comment on small business, we know that 97% of all Australian businesses are small businesses of 20 people and less, and we also know that their needs are specific and they're changing. We've got two real strategies. One is around making business fibre plans more available. So as we've rolled out fibre more across the country, we've been able to offer that to more businesses. And the other piece is making those plans more affordable. We know that there's been small business connectivity has been fueled by growth in cloud services, AI applications, people working remotely more, people working from anywhere they want in the country more. There's a 35% drift from the city to the regions, and we know that that's going to continue. And in terms of more affordable, our business fibre plans have already reduced 35% from July 23 to July 24, and we're actually planning another 21% reduction in price towards the end of this year, because we know how important it is for businesses to be able to access those sorts of services. Yeah, that's really our strategy.
Thanks. So that's a 56% reduction in small business plans by the end of this year.
That's right. And we've seen over the course of this year a doubling of small businesses that have taken up those plans. Mm-hmm. Still relatively early days, so it's 22,000 small businesses that have taken up those plans at this stage, but it's a doubling since this time last year.
And do you expect that to increase with the additional decrease? And do you have a plan about where you want to get to with that?
Yes, Senator. And as more retailers are in market selling those plans as well to businesses, yes.
Thank you.
Senator, it's also obviously as more of our footprint goes from copper to fibre, it then provides a greater opportunity for small business to not only attract those plans but also to move up speed tiers. So particularly interesting if you do have more people on your network, so the number of connected devices and the downloads, for example, it becomes really important to be on a full fibre network for those customers as well.
Mm-hmm. And apologies, just to correct the percentage, it's not 56, it's 49% as it compounds. It's not the two don't add together.
Yeah, okay. Still 49%?
Yeah, still 49% though.
Halving. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Senator Hanson-Young.
I'm waiting for my answers, so that's fine.
Okie dokie. Senator Davey.
Thank you very much, and welcome, Ms. Sweeney.
Thank you.
And thank you for your very comprehensive opening statement. I was starting to think you'd forgotten about the Sky Muster customers, but you got there.
I did. Thank you for bearing with me.
Mr. Williams knows my passion for Sky Muster. Notwithstanding, I note the end-of-life expectancy of your current GeoSat network, but I see in your most recent network premises report released on the 20th of this month, total Sky Muster connections continue to decline, and in fact they're now down to around 81,142 from a previous 2022 report of 108,445. Is that correct?
Well, definitely the 81,142 is correct, Senator.
What do you credit that decline to? Because I know what I hear anecdotally, but have you got any statistics or data? Do you sort of do exit interviews to find out why people are disconnecting?
Well, a couple of things before I throw to Mr. Williams, just on that. It's fair to say, obviously, we only see the premise, so the end user is actually sitting with the ISP. So, again, I might throw to Mr. Williams just to give some flavour around that decline, but clearly it has been declining over the last couple of years, and you're correct, the number is 81,142 at the moment.
Yeah, I think there's a narrative around bush broadband that there's never been a better time for bush broadband, and it's never been a better time, I'd argue, because there's choice. With choice, there's implications for existing providers, and NBN and the Sky Muster service is an example of that. Now, what choice has been developing in regional Australia in the Sky Muster footprint? There's several. One, in fact, is the expansion of the fixed wireless service that I spoke to just before. So part of that expansion is in that area roughly the size of Ireland, that includes a premises, or accommodates a premises count of around 122,000. That's not active premises, Senator. That's premises within that footprint. You can see that on the premises report in the ready to connect columns as well. So a shift from the satellite to fixed wireless. Of those, there's about 19,000 active satellite customers who are now eligible to purchase a fixed wireless a fixed wireless service. And I've got to say, I'm a beneficiary of that on my failed farm down in southwest Victoria, where I was previously running my modest part of the NBN business using the Sky Muster service, Sky Muster Plus Premium, never skipped a beat. And I was able now to migrate to a fixed wireless service, which equally doesn't skip a beat, and pretty amazing that I get 400 odd megabits per second through a line of trees.
Lucky you.
To the dormant.
And the other choices out there would be current Sky Muster GeoSat, and then other people are moving on to. So there's an expansion of the mobile networks as well, and the expansion of plans in those mobile networks. So if you think about... You haven't spoken to anyone since they turned off 3G, have you? Because I can promise you there are people on mobile networks who are now regretting moving to mobile networks.
I've spoken to many, Senator, and I wish they knew about Sky Muster. And of course we've talked at some length here already this evening about low Earth orbit satellites. So there's a lot going on, and for our part, what do we do about it then? As I mentioned, we've expanded our fixed wireless service, we've expanded the capabilities of the Sky Muster service, lifting its speed to a level actually that we didn't anticipate was possible. So offering speeds of 100 megabits per second and uncapped data. So the utilisation...
On the Sky Muster?
Sky Muster Plus Premium, Senator, do yourself a favour.
I know, that's why I'm surprised, because I'm not feeling it.
Well, if I can... very cost uncapped data, so no more data.
The uncapped data, I know.
100 megabits per second.
But the 100 megabits a second,
So now the Sky Muster Plus Premium customers are using, on average, around 200 gigabytes a month. Like a decade ago, the interim satellite service was scoped at 20 gigabytes a month maximum.
Yeah, and a decade ago we didn't have streaming services.
So what are we doing? I'd love to see these numbers not decline, but what the imperative for NBN is to make sure we utilise those assets to their full capability. And frankly, Senator, I argue we are. And in fact, the utilisation of those assets is north of 80% of the network capability. So that's what we're doing, and many happy Sky Muster customers on that network.
So I'm interested, just asking for a friend. You mentioned when you were talking about LeoSats earlier that one of their challenges is that they still need broadband capacity, so they're still using the spectrum. Do LeoSats use the same spectrum that GeoSats are using, and also that the mobile network is using? Because we keep hearing from other telcos for mobile networks that the spectrum's sort of congested, and that's why things might be slowing down at certain times of the day. And I'm just wondering, are we going to stop seeing the increased benefits just because we're going to saturate as many people as possible are going to be trying to vie for the spectrum that's already full?
Yeah, well, Senator, so the spectrum is very carefully managed by the ACMA, I mean, if you say it quickly, they do sound like the same spectrum. So, you know, Ka band at millimetre wave, Ku band, you know, there is the various technologies use similar bands, but the frequencies within those bands, the orientation, so the ability to discriminate between satellites at various inclinations, and it's something that's carefully managed by the ACMA to ensure that it's not a free-for-all. That unmanaged spectrum is the analogy being, say, Wi-Fi, where you can, you know, the Wi-Fi can congest if you're in an apartment block because the neighbours around are using the same kind of spectrum. In the case of licensed spectrum that we're talking about here, is something that is carefully managed. And the way, I mean, for example, in our fixed wireless upgrade, one of the ways that we've been able to achieve such a massive capacity increase for that network, the 4 to 5 times capacity as part of that upgrade, is to have massive spectrum reuse. So in fact, you could use the same bit of spectrum multiple times from the same tower to serve different homes and businesses within that footprint. So there's sort of analogous techniques that operate in the satellite sphere as well.
Did you want to say anything else?
Oh, I think I've covered.
And just similar topic, but moving on, you were talking about looking at solutions for post 2032 and 33 when the geosats reach the end of their life, and you're investigating potentially LEOsat options, amongst other things. We spoke earlier today with the department and others. In the government's 2024 regional telecommunications review, it was observed that current LEOsat constellations are owned and operated by foreign companies, raising questions about data security and control over sovereign risks. Are those potential risks forming part of your investigations as you look for a long-term solution?
Absolutely. So a range of issues around data sovereignty, surety of service. I mean, as a statutory infrastructure provider, we can't put up the sold out sign. So we need to be able to ensure that we have, you know, in any partnership that we might enter into, the surety that we can meet the potential demand of a statutory infrastructure provider safely, securely, with the national interest at the heart.
Senator, it's definitely formed part of, obviously, the RFI process that we've been going through. It also goes through things like lawful intercept. There are a number of things that we really need to take into account here, and obviously, you know, from a broadband provider, and as Mr. Williams has already mentioned, being the statutory infrastructure provider, yeah, again, we take that and the regulations very seriously as well.
Have you, as yet, put a recommendation to the Minister, or is that still some time away for a future option for Sky Master?
Well, we keep the Minister appraised of and the Department appraised of our progress.
But you haven't formed a final recommendation?
Well, we haven't got a... we're not in a position where we've got a final proposal that is inkable, if that's another way of responding to it.
And it's fair to say that when you do, or whatever the final proposal is, the Minister will have to approve?
It'd be subject to... I'm careful in my words because I'm not sure technically the process is, but yeah, I mean, a materials procurement exercise such as this, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Senator Billick. Thank you. Earlier today I was asking Australia Post about the activities they undertake in areas where a natural disaster's occurred. So I was just wondering, you know, I'm thinking about the recent floods in Queensland, so I was just wondering what sort of initiatives NBN has to make the network more resilient to national disasters such as the floods in Queensland.
Senator, we've got I think, an excellent engineering and operations team at NBN, and they have a lot of experience in terms of emergency management and crisis management. So we were definitely impacted by the recent floods in far north Queensland. We were impacted by the cyclone coming in off the coast of WA. Part of the reason that we are working through and obviously looking to build a more resilient network, and some of that is around the investments that we're making in upgrading from fibre to the node and fibre to the curb to a full fibre network. The fault rate, as Mr. Labanovic has already mentioned, is significantly lower when you move on to a full fibre network. Again, when you're on a copper network, it's potentially ageing. It has impacted and degradation from water ingress as well. So there's a number of things we're doing around building resilience within the network, and it includes a number of upgrades and resilient programs we're running against our fibre to the node, fibre to the curb, our HSE network as well in terms of the investments that we're making. We have a large team of people working with our battery replacements. We have a number of cell on wheels so we can move them. We have 121 poise within our network, and we have poise that are available to go if we did have one of our poise actually go out. So we have, I think, a well-honed team in terms of this. We don't take any of this lightly. We work well with the emergency services in each of the states and also at a national level as well. So I think it's in an area which, again, when you're running critical digital infrastructure that we are, with over 20 million people touching it a day, it's something that is taken incredibly seriously.
Do you have any other sort of assets, I suppose, to deploy to support communities in emergencies, other than the ones you've listed?
Yes, so perhaps if I'll raise a few. So,
Thank you.
One of the key areas actually is our satellite disaster recovery solution in emergency evacuation centres. So we're learning from Black Summer, where the team went to the campground in Bateman's Bay on, I think it was the day after New Year's Day on that fateful summer. We identified that we could support the community with a satellite service and off-grid power, and at the time it was a scramble with people knocking on the doors of a local electrical supply to find routers and such things. So that spawned the Strengthening Telecommunications Against Natural Disasters program. So we've now got 1,000 evac centres armed with satellite connectivity available for community members. For example, there was one in Ingham Showgrounds which actually wasn't called upon at the time because it was tragically underwater. But so that's one. Other assets include flyaway kits, which are again the portable satellite SATCOMs devices. The temporary network infrastructure that we've spoken about that can act as, just as it says on the tin, a network system that would replace another system were it to be damaged in, say, a fire or flood. But frankly, one of the key considerations in these kind of emergencies is power resilience. In the case of some of our key fixed wireless locations, we've deployed what we call hybrid power cubes. And what these are solar. They're sort of an integrated device that includes solar power, big battery banks, diesel generator, and a big fuel cell. So they're situated permanently in these locations and able to power the tower if the mains power fails. We also have a large number of NBN-owned diesel generators. We seek to pre-deploy when we can foresee potential events such as the events in far north Queensland, and we have many more of these generators with some of our field delivery partners ready to deploy. So when it's safe to do so, we would deploy those. I note in the Grampians, the tower up at Mount William suffered some significant damage and the power was out. We're actually able to utilise some shared power temporary infrastructure there, and just as if it's dry and fire event down in the Grampians and rain up north. I mean, we cop it all in this country.
It's a vast country.
Yes, indeed.
You mentioned full fibre network removed to that. How does the deployment of that sort of reduce the impact of disasters? So, I mean, floods is pretty obvious, I suppose, as an example.
I'm happy to take that.
Thank you.
What we see is fibre is, on average, about 8 times more reliable than the copper network, and that is due to water ingress that goes into copper joints through to especially what we've seen recently in Queensland with flood damage, rebuilding the FTTN nodes, which has batteries within their power packs, different types of electrical equipment. Those nodes are powered. We've got battery backup in the street network, but obviously when power and electricity grid does go down, we have to deploy generators to keep that up and running. Sometimes you cannot get a generator in to a number of these areas. When it's flood damage, safety is absolute priority for our workforce internally and externally in that regard. So a fibre network has no need to have power in the street. It's passive fibre cable, optical glass, all the way through from the local telephone exchange through to the end customer's home. So that inherent reliability and resilience is built into that fibre cable, and floods, wind damage, those types of aspects, especially if fibre is underground, and we try and underground as much of our fibre as possible where it economically makes sense too, that stands the test of time. And that's back to my earlier mentioning around the upgradability of fibre in the future is about changing the boxes, the electronic boxes at either end, and not having to change that network. So that is why we are seeing less and less network faults and customer faults. And in the event of Queensland, for instance, when there is flood damage, the network is ready to go when power comes back on for customers inside their homes and businesses.
Okay, that's great. Thanks. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Senator Cadell.
Thank you. Comms Day report on 20th December, that same report, the NBN Special Access Undertaking Annual Expenditure Report, said that the FT, fibre to the node premises costs was exceeded your forecast by 29% and fibre to the premises by 27%. The actual costs were redacted, I get that, I don't want that here. But how do we get that so wrong?
So I don't recall the report, Senator, but if we're talking about we're over our estimate of spend on
fibre to the node and fibre to the premises.
Most of that is volume. It's all volume related.
So the actual process of that, are we talking about $3.8 billion to roll the rest of the fibre out to 622,000 homes? Are they the right numbers?
Yep, that is.
How do we recover, according to my calculator, $6,109 per home when we're making, you've got your operating costs and everything? That is a massive, massive return on capital, isn't it? It's a very minimal return on capital. It will take a huge amount of time to pay that off.
Senator, look, your point is obviously very clearly valid. To go back to the original $2 million, obviously that was the we had easier access when we started with that process, and the cost per premise was lower. Then we moved to the next 1.5. The cost per premise, as you know, went up from there, and there was a blended cost, which was about $1,200. So if you look at the recent announcement around the 622 at the current cost of $3.8 billion, you're correct. It comes in at about $6,100. Now, that assumes that we would be 100% rolling out into every home in that 622 or home and premises. We estimate...
So we might even not get that. If every 50%, it could be $12,000 per home that connects.
Well, we actually think we'll get closer to the 95 in terms of building out that local fibre network. It's fair to say this is an investment which has a longer payback period based on, again, those numbers that you've rightly pointed out. In terms of where we think we'll be from there, it is about digital inclusion. Again, we would not have been able to upgrade at the same pace without that investment from the government, so we definitely welcome it. And in terms of our capital management plan and ensuring that we are managing that appropriately, we will be doing that absolutely in terms of the final 622,000. I think we've already mentioned that the 3.5 million that we'll have completed by the end of this year will come in on time and on budget.
Well, one of the 622 doesn't have fibre, but I feel guilty about the spend. You said you'll be migrating a lot of the 100 megabit per second plans to 500 megabit per second plans later at no cost. Is that still the case?
That's correct. So in September of this year, the opportunity, and Anna, I might get you to talk to this in a little bit more detail. There'd been extensive consultation with industry and also with industry partners on this, with the RSPs, around being able to upgrade our speed tiers. So, and I'm not sure if you'd like to.
Yes, and on September 14th, we've announced that we will be, our 120 plan will make that 5 times faster to 550 at no additional wholesale cost.
No, but you expect backhaul to cost more so that retailers might actually charge more? Have you looked at the impact of what you think retailers will do?
Yes, so we've been consulting deeply with the retailers on this topic, and obviously different retailers have different network considerations.
Different backhaul needs and everything, I get that sort of thing, yeah.
So we have been working with retailers on some of the things that will make a difference to them. So, for example, some of the raised NNI costs, which is network-to-network interface.
Yep.
So we've reduced the price on that to make sure that we're lowering the impact on the industry.
How does it work when we're getting, I take the point of increased marginal cost as we get to validation there, but we're lowering the charges like the NNIs and no extra cost for 500s. How do we recover this money?
So I would say that it's a different sort of question. We know that around the world speeds are lifting. We also know that we've reached critical points with our network rollout that mean that we can offer this. Mr. Labanovich can talk to the network upgrades.
I heard his 81 gigs earlier. I went, wow, I'll be king of world of tanks.
It's definitely about... In the future. We're in an evolving competitive market where we'd reached these important milestones on the network, and so we thought that now was the right time to do this. Our cousins in New Zealand, Chorus, their most popular plan is a 300 megabit plan, and they're going to do a speed boost to 500 as well. So this is simply about making the most of our network.
Okay.
I mean, there's a couple of things there, if I could add also. Yeah. I mean, it's obviously there's a revenue impact as we move customers and as customers elect to move on to the higher speed plans. But there's an efficiency gain for us around moving customers off the copper network onto the fibre network. Again, that's quite substantial. You're probably aware that we run 7 networks at the moment. So in terms
I'm on a bloody RIM server. I'm happy to get phone. Yeah, that's fine.
So in terms of the cost and being able to simplify, streamline our business, reduce IT costs, reduce the costs we've just mentioned around batteries, the nodes. We have 28,000 nodes still in this network. So again, the way we look at it is from a cash flow perspective. Once it does go obviously positive, we own the asset, stable revenue, looking at what we're doing from OPEX and obviously the capital reductions that we'll see.
Yep, okay. I'm going to be very, very careful on this next little bit because it is somewhat sensitive. We've got a lot of concerns regarding the field contract services tender that's currently out about the rumoured preferred suppliers and some ACCC action against some of those big guys. Are you considering that before it's out, or has the decision been made and final? I'm not going to name names on this because I don't think that's valid.
We appreciate that.
Yeah, I can cover that. So, Senator, in general, all of our procurement processes are very rigorous, and we've got purchasing frameworks in terms of how we go through those processes, control points through to multiple rounds of assessment, feedback through all of those processes. What you're referring to in regards to the field module RFP that we've got out at the moment, we've been in deep consultation with our partners, industry, since November of 2023. So it's been almost 14 odd months. Through that consultation, we've been working through what does good look like in co-development for this into the future. We finished that consultation in June of last year, went to RFP in August of last year, been in an evaluation process since then, and we are still in that evaluation process. So
you are still in it, sir?
The RFP has not been concluded yet. As part of the process itself, we do indicate to our partners and parties that are part of that process who is preferred and non-preferred as we get close
So
to the
some are
conclusion.
already out, but the final one's not.
Well, we say preferred or non-preferred because we haven't yet concluded terms and conditions with preferred parties. Once we have concluded that, then we formally write to all participants around the outcome, which is where we're not there yet. Absolutely, there is a supplier code of conduct in regards to all procurement processes around ethics, around expectations of what NBN has, around bribery, corruption, independent assessments, around working with other participants, and we've been very clear through that supplier code of conduct and especially through the field module in regards to expectations through that. So we're very confident in our due diligence through this process thus far.
But you have been made aware of the ACCC charges against some participants?
We are aware of that.
That's all I know.
Yeah, we are aware of that.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for coming. Just one wee point. The conversation about costs and where it's going on, there is a much broader benefit to the country in terms of access to education, access to online health services, access for small business to contact their customers. Surely that plays a part in this part of the development of the network. Appreciate that, into the future you're going to hold your own and that'll be great and there'll be a return on investment. But surely at this point in the game, the further investments that are being put in by yourselves and also by the government are about the betterment of our society and access.
Absolutely. I mean, again, the $3 billion investment has brought forward our ability to upgrade those last 622,000 customers who today would not have had an upgrade path off copper and would have been on a service that was degrading. So again, it's a great opportunity for us in terms of, again, we talk a lot at NBN about lifting the digital capability of Australia. Again, being new to the organisation and starting in December, it is an incredibly purpose-led organisation. And I think, again, it is not lost on anyone the nation-building opportunity that we have now. And I think the importance and the criticality of getting it right and the real privileged position that we are in.
And if I might add, Senator, it is a very significant investment from a Labor government perspective also, because the NBN was envisaged as a service that would be nation building in its impact. We had a decade where we had the multi-technology mix. You heard about the legacy impacts of having so many different networks and the cost to the NBN of that approach. We wasted a lot of time under the Liberal and National parties. I am surprised to hear criticism this evening of the investments that are being made now and the equity funding that is being made to complete this project for so many households that will benefit from this really economy-changing, community-changing technology. I had understood, actually, that the Coalition supported this equity investment. I'm now confused based on the questioning we've received this evening, but I imagine that the Shadow Minister may at some point clear that up.
Indeed. Thank you, Minister.
We're not concerned. We're just worried about the amount it is costing and if the public needs to know. We're not saying it shouldn't be done, but we want clarity.
Okay. Ms Sweeney, everybody else, thank you so much. Welcome and good luck in your endeavours. No doubt we will have